Just work your way back to a neutral position. And from that neutral position, try to build on from there. So jiu-jitsu has always been a fairly conservative sport where you find yourself in trouble, fight your way back to neutral position. And 99 times out of 100, that neutral position is guard position. Okay? So if I have Placido on top of me in an alpha position, my goal in Jiu-Jitsu 101 is to get back to guard.
What's up, guys? Craig Jones here. I'm here today to bring you a totally unique new product, totally created by myself. This product is going to be a systematic approach to guard play. I want to teach you today the modern game of playing guard. It's going to be a very unorthodox approach to playing guard. It's going to be built around a few key principles. Those principles will be covered heavily in the conceptual section of this topic, but just to name a few: if we can get up, if you can shoot, never concede to a pin position, always turn to turtle. And what we're going to be looking to do from turtle is looking to gain head height and get back to our feet. So today, what we're going to cover in these topics is where I think the sport is heading. A lot of people talk about how wrestling and jiu-jitsu are going to be combined. And what they mean by that is they think that jiu-jitsu guys are going to learn wrestling and wrestling guys are going to have better jiu-jitsu. And basically what they think is that jiu-jitsu guys are now going to be able to take good shots. But what I think the future of the sport entails is the battle for pin positions and sweeping positions, and a game of trying to get back to their feet. More of like a folk-style wrestling sort of game than a traditional freestyle wrestling game. So some of the stuff we're going to cover: a brief introduction to how we shoot off our feet, basically a strategy for always seeking to get back to our feet, which is going to force our opponents and training partners to have to actively hold us down. And when you start to develop those skills, and guys have to actively hold you down, the range they're going to play from top positions is going to be significantly closer. And when they're in that closer range, we're going to be able to sweep, we're going to be able to create elevations, we're going to have more submission opportunities and reversal opportunities. But again, it's going to be a steep learning curve. You're going to have to put yourself in bad positions. You're going to have to learn some hard lessons playing this game. But I believe when you learn to wrestle up, when you learn how to hip heist, when you learn how to be confident from a turtle position, a 4-point position, and a standing rear body lock, we're also going to cover two other positions, two brand new positions: the reverse Z guard and also the false half guard. I believe with these range of strategies from bottom position, you're going to have a significantly more effective game. And it's going to be more in line with where I believe the sport's heading. I believe the last trend was leg locks. Everyone believes the future trend's wrestling, but what they mean by that are entirely different things. So even if you're not looking to redevelop your entire game, most people buy these instructionals because they want 1, 2, 3 techniques to piss off their training partners. This is going to be the one for you. We're going to have some of the most annoying, unorthodox reversals from positions your opponents and training partners will never see coming. All right, guys, let's talk about the first concept, and that is basically, if there is space, get up. If you've trained with MMA fighters or wrestlers, or even, I guess even these days, jiu-jitsu guys that aren't comfortable being on bottom, what you'll notice they do, and what's really frustrating, is they just stand up. A lot of jiu-jitsu guys, even jiu-jitsu black belts, have no ability to hold someone down or pin them. And that's because typically in training, if they sweep someone, the person they swept just accepts that now they're playing bottom position. Sort of an unspoken rule in jiu-jitsu that if you get put on your butt, you're going to play from your butt, look to establish guards or submissions from there. But again, like I said, if you guys have ever trained with high-level MMA guys, the second you sweep them, they're immediately trying to get up, and it's almost a very frustrating thing. You feel like they're not playing by the rules. Some MMA fighters, I've trained with Jake Shields. If you leave space, he'll fully kick you in the chest and send you flying backwards just so he can get back up. And although this seems like a grappler not training their weaker areas, them doing this actually changes the game entirely, because now in my head, when I sweep someone, I can't leave any space. I have to hold them down. And obviously when I have to rush to hold someone down, I can end up in different scrambling positions where me trying to hold them down actually gets me swept or submitted. Whereas against a jiu-jitsu guy, if I sweep him and I know they're going to accept bottom position, I can play a pretty safe range. So what first appears to be something that someone's doing that it'd be considered a weak part of their game, then not playing by the rules, can actually lead to some really good scrambles and submissions and sweeps in and of itself. So this is what it would look like, right? If I grab Nick Ortiz here, typically speaking, if I'm on my butt here and Nick wants to prevent any sort of shot from my butt, it'll be the same as in wrestling. He's trying to keep head-to-head pressure here, right? I can't shoot through his head. But the problem with this posture is I can take a frame and I can take a post on the ground and I can use this frame to keep Nick at range as I heist back up and obviously create space to get up. If Nick knows that I'm going to do this, obviously he's not going to stay at this range. If he stays at this range, like I said again, I can take a frame and just get back up. And in a competition setting, in a point setting, obviously things get complicated because if Nick's a superior wrestler and he can just keep taking me down as I get back up, obviously that has its problems. But it also, typically wrestlers are used to a shorter duration. So they might take you down 3-4 times, but they're going to get tired doing it. And there are some opportunities in those scrambles where we could submit them, potentially reverse them. But again, if Nick knows that I'm going to get up at this range, he's going to rush towards me. And when he rushes towards me, we have opportunities for leg entries, or even if his head's out of the way and he's rushing towards me, we have opportunities to shoot off the butt. So I want you to do this as sort of an exercise or a drill, and you can pick up this concept very easily. Next time you go to training, simply don't accept bottom position. If you're going to be on bottom, your training partner has to hold you on bottom. Sure, you might get submitted, you might end up in a front headlock, but what you're going to notice is there's going to be way more opportunities for you to reverse the top player, for you to hit submissions, just simply by the fact that you keep getting up when you end up on bottom, because that's going to interfere with their range. Same thing happens every time. Every time I train with an MMA guy for the first time, I forget about the fact that they're not going to just accept bottom position. And suddenly the dynamic of the role changes completely. Me having to hold them down can exhaust me. So again, just practice this exercise and you're going to find a whole lot more opportunities for submissions and sweeps that wouldn't have happened if your opponent was at a greater range. All right, guys, the second concept we're going to cover here, it's going to be throughout the whole instructional, and that is if your opponent's posture is out of position, just shoot. What do I mean by out of position? If they're not head to head, if they're just standing in front of you, take a shot. You have to be confident in your front headlock defense, but the only way you're going to get good at defending the front headlock is to be in there a lot. The only way you're going to get good from shooting off your butt is to take a lot of shots. So obviously this will be another training exercise, just something to throw into your game. Even if you don't end up making this style of guard play your game, it's still going to be an exercise that's going to force you to learn new skills, going to make you a better grappler all around. So if Nick Ortiz is standing above me, again, if he's head to head like we did in the last scene, I can't shoot. It'd be like shooting on the feet. If we're head to head and he's tracking me, I cannot shoot through this, right? Any wrestler, if Nick was standing like this, is going to take a shot. So you guys can still generate the same force off of the butt hit. And it could be a number of shots. We can toss our legs to the side and take a inside knee pull to come up and pick up a single. If Nick's standing in front of me here and his posture's up, I could just shoot a double leg, take him down. If he's got a square stance here, maybe I've pulled a wrist, I secure his legs from the base here, Nick starts to walk backwards, he can pull me into a lock double and we can take him down. So just as an exercise, this will be the second key concept of the instructional and the second sort of key take-home exercise you can just experiment on in your gym today is if Nick's head to head, heist. If Nick's posture's off, just take a shot. Throw your legs out of the way, take a shot. Shoot a double from here. So we're going to give him two things to think about, two things that are very unexpected. Traditional jiu-jitsu guys, A, don't expect you to get up. B, don't expect you to take a shot. You throwing those things into the mix is going to change your training partner's habits. He's going to start doing things he typically wouldn't do in an effort to A, hold you down, and B, prevent the shot. The third concept that's going to basically feature throughout this instructional is never accept a pass position. Quite often in the gym, for the average jiu-jitsu practitioner, they're very confident defending from side control bottom. So when someone's passing their guard, they'll say, hey, well, I could turtle and risk getting into an even worse position, a position I'm less comfortable defending, and that is if my opponent takes my back. Or I could concede side control and fight out of there defensively and most likely get my guard back and not get submitted. That really is a great way to train for a no time limit match. But when we're talking about time constraints here and points events, your best bet is to turtle. And really that's something that's a shortcoming in a lot of competitors' games, is because everyone they train with in the gym accepts side control and they don't have to fight to pin someone from there. And then every time they compete, their opponents turtle and they realize that they're not too good at taking the back when someone's turning away. What I want you to do as a defensive grappler here is never accept side control. If you can turn into a single leg or you can turtle away, always take those options, even though they're going to put you in submission danger, because that's what that's going to encourage you to do, is learn defensive skills from there and really put your opponents in potentially positions they're not so comfortable in. They're comfortable attacking a turtled opponent when that turtle opponent doesn't really know what they're doing from turtle. Or they're comfortable attacking a turtled opponent when that turtle opponent isn't trying to get up. Another thing that happens with MMA guys is obviously they're always looking to get up. So sometimes they'll turn to turtle and they'll allow you to take a rear body lock and try to throw in hooks, and they'll either stand up and shake you off or stand up, strip your grips, and turn around. And the only way to get good at those positions is to put yourself there. So you're going to have to really use this as another training exercise, and that's when someone's going to pass your guard, turn to turtle, obviously practice defending their hooks and really learn how to fight out of those positions and get back to your feet. Or even if you do turn to turtle, you start to get up and they mat return you. Then mat returning you provides you opportunities to scramble out, and it fatigues your opponent. And so long as you know how to fall and don't stiffen up and freak out, you're really not at risk of taking any injuries from there. You just need to understand that and start taking those risks. So obviously if Nick's passing my guard here, as he starts to pass, I could accept the pass and shell up, and Nick comes down, I keep everything tight and obviously lose position. I might be stuck here for a long time. I might be stuck here for the rest of the round, or I might get a knee back in, get my guard back. But obviously in this situation, we haven't forced Nick to really use any energy, and we haven't taken any risks ourselves. Whereas when Nick passes here, if I can, he's coming in close. If I start to turtle away, I'm obviously defending hooks on the inside here. Nick's following me here. We end up in a rear body lock from here. Now we've provided something new. Again, most jiu-jitsu guys are terrible at defending from the turtle position. So really, they struggle here. But you can develop a really good game and start thinking about reversals from here. Just an example, I could hook the inside leg and come back on top of Nick. If Nick's in the rear body lock here and he's keeping his weight off of me, I could just stand up, strip the grips, and get out of there. Or really, worst case scenario, but still good, is as I come up, maybe Nick lifts me up and puts me back down. But even in these opportunities, I can seek head height, and now Nick has to athletically try to pin me from here. And we have a scramble where potentially I might secure a front headlock. So you can see all the opportunities that come up when we turtle. Worst case scenario, he takes my back. He's got your back, you need to have good defense. Typically what you'll find is they might get a single hook. And from going from a single hook to two hooks on a defensively strong opponent is very, very difficult. So even if you turtle, your opponent gets a single hook, I'm going to show you strategies to beat that hook and turn it into obviously scrambling opportunities to get back on top. But again, this concept is if you have a choice between accepting the pass or turtling, always turtle, because in competition, that's what you're going to have to do. So you've got to sort of risk getting submitted in the gym by turtling, risk getting put in a bad position, so that you have those skills come competition day. All right, guys, so another concept I want to talk about is always be seeking head and hip height. Generally speaking, in scrambling positions, in wrestling style scrambles, whoever's head is higher is going to be in the most advantageous position to win those exchanges. So say, for example, you go to get up and your opponent shoots a double, or say you go to get up, he secures a body lock and he dumps you back down. I don't want your first reaction to be, how can I defend this and end up in a safe guard position, maybe a half guard or a closed guard, and how can you avoid getting your back taken? I want you to think, immediately start seeking head height. So a good example of that is say Nick's just put me down in a double leg here. I could concede and start trying to get my knees in close and try to get some sort of guard back in. Or if Nick's put me down in a double here, I could start reaching and posting here. And now Nick has got me to a hip, but he still has a long way to go before he secures the takedown. From here, with basically a belly whizzer and a hand post, I can start to get my legs back out under me and turn it into an advantageous position. Potentially here, if I've got a tight belly whizzer here and I can secure the leg, because I've got head height here, I can pull Nick through, and you can see I'm seeking hip height first and head height, and we've turned it into a dominant position here. So again, out of any scrambles, even if Nick were to shoot and put me down in a double and I end up in close guard, instead of locking my legs here, I'm immediately throwing an arm over the back and trying to get my head as high as possible here. I can start standing up. Even if Nick puts me back down here, puts me back down to a hip, I'm constantly seeking head height here. Another good example would be if Nick picks me up in a reverse, in a rear body lock here, and he dumps me back to the ground. Rather than conceding here, I can start to reach for that same grip, start getting my hips out and potentially turning it around or securing a front headlock. So it'll be a bit of a learning curve to start playing with that, but really, if you get taken down, swept, and you can see the position to safety, your opponent's already scored. He's already put you down. He doesn't have to worry about pinning you. If when you get put down, you're trying to get your head high, you're trying to get back to your feet immediately every time, then they have to really have the ability to pin you. And if they don't have the ability to pin you, they have to put you back down again. And now, instead of them scoring off the first takedown, they still might score, but it might be 3 or 4 takedowns to get you there. And all you've done is try to seek high. And all they've had to do is keep doing big, explosive movements, trying to return you to the mat. And quite often what happens is your opponent starts to get frustrated. When they get frustrated, they start to use more strength. When they start to use more strength, they get gassed out. If they hit a big slam on you and you immediately get back up, next time they're going to do it more explosively. And really, if a guy has a wrestling background, he's used to 3-minute rounds. This could be a 15, 20, 30-minute match. No one's going to keep picking someone up and slamming them to the ground that many times. So don't think of it, you doing these strategies is going to get you the immediate win, but it's going to kill their energy levels, and it's going to allow you to really take over later in the match. So sometimes when you're dealing with explosive athletic wrestling style opponents, we have to eat a few takedowns to get really the ability to submit them as they get tired. I've separated this instructional into ranges, 3 ranges: long range, mid range, and short range. And these categories basically summarize the ease of your opponent in his ability to pin you or hold you down. So long range would be, I'm seated and Nick's standing. Obviously this might come out off of a single leg dump where he dumps me to the ground and he's still close to me, but he still remains standing and I'm seated here. I consider this long range because basically Nick's quite far from a pinning sort of ability here. It's very easy for me to secure frames and heist back up. Mid-range, if Nick drops to his knees here, well, we've ended up in a position like this, but it's not a half guard, it's not a closed guard. He doesn't have me intertwined in any way in which he can effectively hold me down for a long period. But I consider it mid because he's very close to that. One mistake, I keep my elbows wide, he dives a body lock, and he knocks me down. Now, he's basically secured what I would consider a short range, and that is he secured grips that are gonna pin me here. Whether that's a body lock, it could be a half guard where my bottom leg's trapped. It's very hard for me to retract that bottom leg. Even closed guard. It's obviously gonna be very hard for me to get up from a closed guard position. So in terms of range, we're talking about our opponent's ability to pin us. So long range, they're standing, we're seated. Mid range, they're on their knees and we're seated, our back's not flat. So they're very close to being able to pin us, but they really have no control over us yet. Short range, worst case scenario is we've been taken down or swept, or we've ended up in a position where they do have effective pinning capabilities. So throughout the instruction, we're gonna have different attacks from different areas. And a lot of those attacks are gonna be about maybe we're in a short range pinning position, we go for a movement, we end up back to mid range because it fails, we fail to get up or sweep them, but we're constantly working to get back to long range, back to our feet, and we're gonna basically have different strategies, concepts, and approaches from each different form of range. Guys, let's talk about the first range of guard. And that first range is going to be basically a long range guard. What do I mean by long range? I mean long range, basically where that unspoken rule of jiu-jitsu is that the passer can sort of stay at this range and not have to worry about the bottom guy coming up. It's basically a accepted position where Nick's standing above me and I'm here. In 99% of jiu-jitsu gyms around the world, the bottom guy would never stand up. If I were to stand up, Nick would kind of be offended. He'd be like, hey, you've broken the rules here. You shouldn't have done that. You're on bottom, you need to play bottom. I'm on top, I play top. So again, like we covered in the concept section, basically, if someone's chilling out at this range, your best option is going to be just to get up. So again, if we want to heist from here, if Nick's head to head here, if he's head to head, that means forward pressure attacks where if I were to shoot, or really even go to the legs, he's probably going to take his leg away before I reach it. If he's at this range and we're not happy with him at this range, we need to make him uncomfortable with this range. And the best way to do that is take a frame, take a post on the ground, lift your hips off the ground, and get back up. We can basically just hip heist back up. If we do this even 2-3 times, even if us getting up results in our training partner taking us back down again, they're still not going to want to take you down over and over again. They're going to want to submit you. Obviously, the purpose of jiu-jitsu is positionally dominate someone and use that to lead it to a submission, right? So again, if we keep doing this from this range, eventually Nick's going to realize the only way to comfortably keep me down is to get head over head. When he's head over head, if I try to get up here, I'm just giving him my back. And obviously I'm up, but that's a very good position for him to take the back in. So really, us heisting from here changes Nick's range. So this first position, I'm calling it long range guard because it is the range at which Nick would ordinarily not expect me to get up. So us introducing this heisting is going to cause him to change his approach. And that approach is probably going to be him bringing his head from in front of me where I can take a post to head over head. If he's coming to this range now and I try to get up, like I said, we would probably get our back taken. But by doing this, he's only thinking that my sole purpose is to get up. But again, look at this, what we've seen here. We could easily take single X Ashi positions here and engage the legs. We'll get into more detail on this after, but just to introduce it. If Nick's worried about me coming up and he starts rushing me, we can turn it into shots there because him being head over head leads to shots and leg entries. Him being head to head allows me to heist. So he has to choose one posture over another. He is to try to work out what my intentions are, and I have to mask my intentions and match them to the posture he decides. To summarize again, head to head, high stop. If he's head over head, he thinks I'm getting up, engage the legs, or if he's rushing me here, we can take shots out of this position. So again, long range guard, to play this effectively, you need to introduce the concept of heisting. Constantly heist if someone leaves the room. And you're going to find that when you're back in that position, they're worried about you getting up. They're going to change that range and bring themselves into areas where leg locks will work better, shots will work better, ankle picks will work better, arm drags will work better. All right, guys, so obviously we're going to have to, in this long range position, we're going to have to be able to get to our knees or get into positions where we can shoot takedowns. And there are a few different ways we can do this. I'll briefly summarize them, right? So we're in our position here. We're playing at range. Obviously, we could heist here quite easily. But how do we get up to shoot? Obviously, the most simple way, but some people have a lot of difficulty with it, is just to come up over this knee. The way I'm going to do that is lead with the head. So don't try to stomp your foot and come up. Lead with your head. And that's how we can get, obviously, in range to get to the leg. So again, a lot of people struggle because they're not bringing their head forward. Your head needs to come forward as you reach. That's what's going to pull you up, and obviously we can take our shots out of here. So we're in our guard position where we could heist, or if we want to shoot, lead with the head and the arms will follow. And from here we can replant and start getting up. So that's the most simple one, but again, some people have trouble with it. Another way we could do it is we could take a post and throw our knees behind us here. So we could go from side to side. So I throw and turn my inside knee on the ground, and we can come up off that knee. We could come straight up onto a foot and start shooting. So again, we're in this position. We could choose either side. It's just we need to throw our legs to the opposite side of the post. So if I post, both knees come behind. I start to come up. We can come to two knees, or we can come straight up and carry through with momentum. I can choose either side with this one. I just need to switch the post here, and we can start reaching. So a few different angles here. We're in our hands. We throw our legs to the opposite side. We start to come up, and we can lift again. Or we could switch sides, which usually gives us a bit more momentum. So we're playing guard. We throw our legs to one side. We can start to come up. Or we switch sides to give us a bit more momentum. We can start to come up. A third option is to come up over both knees. So I'm going to have to drop my other foot. We plant our knees and bring our head forward. And that gets us in a position to come up. Obviously, the quicker you can do this, the more effective your shot's going to be. We place our other foot below the opposite knee, like we're cross-legged. Lead with the head, and we can come into shooting positions. Remember, sometimes when we're here, we'll have the two legs first. So if Nick's in front of me here, sometimes I'll even, if he's in a square stance, he's going to help pull me up. So it won't just be momentum based. So sometimes if I'm here in front of Nick, and we can get underneath those hips. But again, to summarize the three: straight up, throw our legs to the side, get up, or cross-legged, knees, and come straight up. So our three options to get up, to start setting up shots off of our butt. From the long range guard, we need to talk about how Nick's head positioning can allow us to shoot, and how we can basically create forced errors in Nick to encourage a posture that leads to us being able to shoot quite easily, right? So if Nick's standing in front of me here, again, we have that basically concept that if he's head to head, he's giving us a hip heisting position, right? It's still good for Nick to be head to head here, but generally speaking, he's not going to stay here for long. He's going to be head to head and immediately look to lift the leg and get me to a supine position and then start working his passing. But it's not going to be good for Nick to just remain head to head here for the obvious reason, like we've explained many times, and that is I can heist. But also, if Nick doesn't have this head to head position, if his head's high, that's going to be bad for him too, because he's giving us perfect shots, really. And just like in wrestling, Nick, to keep good head positioning here, is basically going to fatigue him, right? The longer he is in a head-to-head position here, the more tired he's going to be. Just like in wrestling, if I'm forcing him to match levels for a long time, it's going to take a lot of stress on our backs, and that's why you'll see a lot of wrestlers talk shit about jiu-jitsu guys, but what they don't understand is that we have 20, 30, 40-minute matches at ADCC, and I don't know anyone that can keep a really good posture for that long. So you see jiu-jitsu guys having a higher head. Another reason they have a higher head is it's more difficult to shoot a takedown and just run through someone when you don't have shoes on. So to have high posture, it can be a little more forgiving without wrestling shoes. So if we're here, sometimes Nick's posture will just be up. If it's up, I want you to just take your shots off the butt. Just go for it straight away. Obviously, don't hesitate at all in this moment. If Nick's head to head here, and he just starts to posture up, I might just shoot straight away and try to punish him for that. If, say, Nick's put me to the ground here, say he's just hit a single and he clubs me down, he takes a step back and his head comes up, I want you to shoot straight away. So this would be if A, his posture is that of a guy that hasn't dealt with people shooting off the butt, their head will likely be high. B, they're fatigued, their head's likely going to be high. Or we can start to force these things to happen. If Nick's in front of me here, and I'm starting to grip fight, and I'm pulling his hand, I'm trying to pull him to me, him to counteract this, he can't just pull his arm back. I'm probably going to overpower it from this position. He needs to lift his head, and as he lifts his head, he can rip that arm out. So we can create forced areas here by pulling his arm, and that will allow us to get to the legs here. Another one is if I reach for the near side, he just can posture and likely keep a staggered stance. He can posture out of this and pull his arm back. If we're going for the hand on the rear side, chances are he'll have to step that leg forward to posture out, and that's where we can use his backwards pressure to hit lock doubles here. So again, if we're reaching for the near side arm, he probably doesn't really need to square up to break this grip. He can probably just rip it out. If we want him to square up, we can control the second arm, and we can take potentially lock doubles or run straight through him. So we can create forced areas. Another one here is a bit more risky because potentially Davi Ramos style, I reach for a collar tie here, Nick might fucking flying triangle, or he might flying armbar me from here. But just like in wrestling, if I'm pulling his head down, he wants to get that head up, he's gonna fight it and resist. So we can do a range of things here to create that posture. So again, we can fight the grips, he pulls that up, we can take our shots. If we want to square his stance up, we can start to affect the head. But we just want to shoot, we want to be quick, very quick, just like in wrestling. If you're out of position, take advantage of it. Another option we can do here is create an off balance. If Nick's in front of me square here, and I hit and off balance, he might go down. Or when you're off balance, what happens is you're likely going to bring your arms up and try to catch your own balance. And we can use that to start taking shots. If Nick keeps his head forward and his hands low, and I hit an off balance, he falls back straight away. If he can bring his head higher and wave his arms around to basically correct himself here, he saves himself from the off balance that would sweep him straight away, but he gives us a perfect shot. So there's numerous things we can do from here to either force errors in our training partners, to make them raise their head and be out of position, we can basically take his fatigue levels to force him out of position. Just like if he was standing up wrestling, the fatigue might break his posture to a less safe position. We can hit off balances to create shots from here. So really, if they're head to head, you can go for the highest. If they're head to head and they're starting to interfere with your feet, we have to hand fight from this position. And we can use that hand fighting to force them out of positions to take shots very, very quickly. Again, even if people know you're going to shoot from here, you're going to be so quick from whatever off balance, whatever hand fight, whatever head snap, that you're going to shoot before they can get back into position. And these are the ways we can affect our training partners' postures to create perfect shot scenarios from our butt. All right, let's talk about setting up one of the most simple double legs from the seated position, and that would be a head inside double. Obviously, we could have a head in the hip bucket, but a lot of people are scared to do that in a jiu-jitsu setting because they think they're going to get guillotines. I think that's wrong. I think they're just scared to do the technique. But the first one we're going to do is probably the safest one you can do. It is a scary one from the feet. A lot of people get stingers, obviously, especially jiu-jitsu guys. We have much smaller necks than wrestlers, so when the head hits the chest and they start to look backwards and it whips them back, they'll get a stinger. But from the ground, because we're not dealing with as much speed or momentum, you're going to be much safer with this one. So what is it? So the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that we get our training partner in a square stance. I want to be able to reach both legs. And obviously in a staggered stance, if I get to one, can't reach the other, we've got a bit of a problem here. So one of the best ways to get a square stance is to look for wrist control, especially on the arm of the leg that's back. It is possible to pull the lead arm, and as they retract it, they square themselves up. Typically what it'll mean though is that it's the lead leg stepping back into a square stance that they pull it out. And you can see now I'm further away from the two legs. So if we want to square them up and we want to maintain their legs being close, I would recommend securing the arm of the leg at the rear. Because when we pull this, you see what happens? Nick steps that leg into line to now pull the arm back. He squares his stance for momentum, and that means that they're both very close here. So just something to think about. I'm not saying it's impossible to do it off the lead arm. It's just going to be easier to do it off the rear arm. So what do we do following this, right? We square them up. They don't want us to have this grip. They overreact. We're going to grab behind both knees. We're going to go wrist deep. So don't just grab with your fingertips. Obviously, we're dealing with very slippery people here. We want to go wrist deep. I want to come up and I want to place my head in the center of Nick's sternum here. And I'm going to use my head to take his shoulders behind his knees here. If he steps back with one of his legs, just square yourself up here. So it's a good little drill to practice it. Nick steps back with one of the legs. I just square myself up. Nick steps back with the other leg. And you'll see it's very, very easy for me to just run through Nick here. But you imagine if we're doing this from a standing position. Say I break Nick's posture a little bit, he postures back up, and I come in from here. I've got a lot of momentum, and you can see if my neck goes backwards, it's going to put a lot of pressure on my neck. So unless you have a strong neck or a wrestling background in a jiu-jitsu setting, I would still be cautious about doing that from the feet unless you feel like you have the adequate experience. But if you see from the butt here, very little chance of me getting a stinger on myself. So obviously very simple double, high success rate, a great one to start with because it's very low risk. I could even use it to get up. What I mean by low risk is a lot of people are scared to shoot off their butt. Say I square Nick up and I come up and I have no guillotine defense, they get submitted here. Low risk again is Nick's trying to guillotine me, nothing there. Say I don't get the takedown, I'm back up to a neutral position. So that's what I mean by low risk is that very slim chance we get submitted going for it. Very safe way to get back to your feet if you don't get the takedown. But I would imagine if we get wrist deep, head center, we get forward momentum and their shoulders behind their hip line, we're going to take them down. Good one to start with as an introduction to wrestling off your butt. All right, so let's look at the second double leg I want you to play around with, following the head and the center. The second one is going to be, we're going to take 2 wrist grips again, but we're going to use a backwards momentum to pull us to our knees into a lock double. A lock double is a real safe double leg to go for. If I shoot 2 hands on outside and I'm not comfortable from the front head position and my shot's quite weak, they might sprawl out and I end up in a bad position where they could attack a front head, hit a go behind, and get to an advantageous position. If we hit a lock double, chances are we're not going to get guillotines. We've got their legs controlled. If they go for a guillotine, we're going to be able to lift, get their legs off center, complete the takedown. Or if we do hit a lock double, we have that extra layer of control, which obviously slipperiness is a big factor here. If I'm just controlling the legs, we lose a leg, we can be in trouble. If we lock up our hands, whether it be palm to palm, whether I go palm to wrist, keep my elbows tight, it's quite a safe one for you to experiment with when you're uncomfortable practicing shots from this position. So let's take a look at how we set that up and what we could go for here. Whenever we're going for doubles, I want you guys to focus on squaring the legs up here, because again, just like I mentioned in the previous chapter, if we're reaching for 2 legs and 1 staggered, you see we're going to come up short here. Just like I said in the previous chapter, if I want to pull using the lead arm, chances are Nick's going to square his stance by stepping backwards. And now we're out of range. If we wanted to square his stance by stepping forward, we attack the rear arm, the arm of the rear foot. And when we're pulling that forward, you see he squares himself up to break the grip, and he squares himself up in a way that keeps him at close range. When he goes to overreact, I want you to control both the backs of both knees. And remember, we're going wrist deep here. We're trying to control with the wrist. It's going to eliminate the slipperiness factor that this would be a problem with, right? So we've squared them up, wrist deep, and I'm tucking both legs in here. Nick trying to pull his legs backwards in a way gives me the momentum to come up. So as he pulls, I come up to 2 knees, and I immediately lock my hands. I want you guys to lock and keep your elbows tight, and I want the lock to not be above the hips. He can sprawl here. Obviously, there's things we can do out of the body lock here. And if we're too low here, it's going to be very easy for Nick to keep his balance. So we want to go just below the butt cheeks here. If we do have the momentum coming up, I want you to pop your hips forward and lift their legs off the ground. So you can see how I can lift Nick's feet by bringing my hips forward. And why it's safe for guillotines is because with his legs off the ground, I can pull his legs to the opposite side. Obviously, if he was going for a guillotine there, we could counter it with a bon flu, or essentially it would have no power in it at all. We do have another option from this position here. We square him up, we grab wrist deep, he pulls us to our knees, and we lock the double here. If Nick is quite long, or if I'm out of position here, and my hips come up, and nothing happens here, I would suggest coming up to the outside leg, and using your head to try to return the hands to the floor. So if you can see, we'll pretend I'm with a partner here. If when we pop our hips, their feet are on the ground, I want you to step up with the outside leg and turn your ear to their shoulder blade to try to get their hands to the floor. If their hands don't go to the floor, we might end up with a rear body lock, which is still pretty good. Let's say I've come up. I can't get Nick's feet off the ground. So I step up, and Nick's not going to the ground here. We just secure a rear body lock. Obviously we can work on that returns from here. Or if our goal is to stand up, we could just let go and be back to our feet. But again, lock double, attack the rear arm. They start to square up, wrist deep. Cross your feet as Nick pops backwards and pulls me up. Best option is we lock super tight and our hip hop lifts them off the ground. And we land side control. Option 2. Nick's legs are too long and we get here and his feet are on the ground. Step up with your outside leg use our inside ear to turn them and get their hands to the floor. Second option, second best option. Third option is, again, we can't lift. We come up. I can't move Nick from here. Just circle and secure the rear body lock. So 3 safe options out of a lock double. And the method to stand up is crisscrossing our feet and using their momentum to pull us back. All right, guys, so we've set up a few doubles from our butt. The doubles you go for from your butt don't necessarily need to lead to a takedown. They can lead to other opportunities. It's about being unpredictable. If we have an opponent in front of us that we're really trying to get to a single leg X or an ashi garami position, and we cannot make it happen, a great way to make it happen is to shoot a double and slide into the ashi. And the reason this is so effective is it's an entry to the ashi that leads to double leg control. One of the biggest problems with playing a standard ashi or single leg X is we're committed to one leg, but we don't have control over the second. It's hard to off balance them and knock them over. When we shoot a double and slide in, well, ultimately, because of the nature of the double leg grips, we have ourselves double leg control from the ashi. Way easier to off balance, way safer position. So we can set it up the same way we've set up every double leg so far. And that is to square up the stance, take 2 wrist grips. We start to come up and we've landed here. All I'm gonna do is slide my rear knee to my lead foot and bring my lead foot, the knee of this lead leg, to my chest. And you can see we've landed with double leg control. If I don't have double leg control, Nick's balance is going to be really good from here. It's hard for me to affect him here. If I have 2 legs, whether that be the knee or the ankle, super easy for me to off Nick and turn it straight into a sweep. So we can use the double leg entries to lead to leg entries that still ultimately just lead to a sweep or takedown, right? So again, we just need to square them up exactly like we've been doing. We control the rear arm. As they pull back, we come up. I immediately slide. And we can even knock them straight over. And we've now used a leg entry to get to the sweep, or if I were to enter it and I wanted to attack the leg straight away, you square them up, we come up. We've got our leg entries available here. We can start reaping out of here, start attacking, pass the leg across, and we've got our basic entries to the legs. So again, in real time, it's going to look like this. Me and Nick are playing here. And we've got our leg entries. We've got our double legs that lead to the legs, that can lead to sweep or leg attacks. So obviously, a way to be unpredictable from that position. If someone shoots a double on you, no way you're expecting that's an entry to the legs. Being unpredictable is one of the best battles we can have to win in jiu-jitsu.